Canada. I will bang on the desk to signal 1 minute remaining. And there will be no points of order, clarification, or privilege. I call upon the first speaker to introduce the proposition case for 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today, my team will be arguing the irrefutable statement that Australia is better than Canada. I will be presenting 2 points. Firstly, that Canada has the worst weather conditions of any country in the entire world. And secondly, that famous Australians are far superior than any Canadian ever. My second speaker will focus on the greater happiness quota and the superior sports teams of Australia. My third speaker will conclude that Australia is better than Canada with a rebuttal and a summary. And now, my first point discussing Canadian climate. Yes, Canada does have the worst weather of any country in the entire world. Freezing cold temperatures, snow, ice, hail, rain, and storms in the winter, and heat waves with blistering and fiery temperatures in the summer. From the prairies to the Maritimes, from the territories to southern Ontario. The weather is so horrific and disgusting that Canadians have come up with a disorder for it, seasonal affective disorder. The weather is so bad in Canada that it is literally depressing. I will now move on to my second point, that Australian celebrities are far more talented and superior than any Canadian ever. What do AC/DC, Hugh Jackman, and Aspirin have in common? Australia. Australia is home to numerous talented singers, songwriters, inventors, and Nobel Prize winners. What would we do without Wi-Fi? Where would we be without penicillin? What about Liam and Chris Hemsworth? Where would we be without flushing toilets? And where does Canada have to do with this? Justin Bieber, the most hated celebrity in the entire world, and Pictionary, a game which has torn families apart for centuries. In conclusion, I have shown you that Australia is far better than Canada, and for 2 main reasons. Firstly, the Canadian climate has the worst weather conditions of any country in the world, and secondly, that Australian celebrities have far more talent. Ultimately, I think my team has made it clear that Australia is far superior than Canada. Thank you.
I thank the speaker for her remarks. We shall now hear the first speaker for the opposition.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is with this that I have found 2 points of contention with the opposition's case. Firstly, climate. In colder climates, you can always put on more clothing, but in the incredibly hot climate of Australia, there aren't very many clothing options. I'll be discussing climate further in my own case. In regards to celebrities, my second speaker will be discussing this, as well as the Canadian accent. Now, moving on to my team's case, I will be presenting 2 points. Firstly, the Canadian cuisine is far superior to that of Australia. And secondly, the Canadian climate is far more livable. Now, to my first point discussing the fine Canadian cuisine. Canadian delicacies like beaver tail and poutine have been refined and perfected over generations by world-class chefs. Since coming to this country, I have enjoyed delicious gourmet cooking. It is completely different league to the standard I expected in Australia. After some time, Kangaroo and Vegemite failed to support not only my nutritional needs, but eventually my taste buds as well. And now to my second point, the Canadian climate is far more livable. People come to Canada because of the climate, especially people who like it cold. Australia's largely tropical climate, together with beautiful palm trees and sunny beaches, has become quite unappealing. When it is also so beautiful outside, that leaves no time for being indoors and enjoying activities such as watching TV and other worthwhile activities. In conclusion, I have shown you that Australia is certainly not better than Canada for 2 main reasons. Firstly, the Canadian cuisine is far superior to that of Australia, and second, that the Canadian climate is far more livable. Ladies and gentlemen, we on the negative team are living proof of our case. Would I have bothered to fly all the way across the world to Canada if it was not in fact better than Australia? Thank you.
I thank the speaker for his remarks. I now call upon the second speaker for the proposition.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is with this that I found 2 points of connection with the opposition's case. Firstly, the cuisine. Canada's cuisine is famous for poutine, Tim Hortons and beaver tails. none of which have any very good nutritional value. And he also mentioned that his taste buds preferred this. Upon coming here, I was astounded at how wrong that proposition is. Second of all, the climate. My opposition says that it is always possible that if one is cold to just simply put on more layers. However, I have found that with the Canadian climate, there's always a point in which no matter how many layers you have, you will still be cold. Ladies and gentlemen, today my team is arguing the irrefutable statement that Australia is better than Canada. I will be representing 2 points. Firstly, that although they have an equal GDP per capita, Australia is higher in their happiness ratings. And secondly, that Australia has a better rugby team and just generally better sports. Now, for my first point, although Australia and Canada have equal GDP per capita, placing them both at 19th in ranking, Australia makes it into the higher happiness ratings for the top 10. I have found that this is for 2 reasons. First of all, they have the highest alcohol consumption per head. And second of all, as my second point shall discuss, they actually have pride in their national sport and they excel at it. Canada, the reason that Canada does not fare well in national happiness ratings is that their national sport, the only thing that they can really be proud of, is of repeatedly being beaten by the USA and Russia in both their national sports being ice hockey and lacrosse. My second point is that Australia has a better sports team than Canada. Australia comes second in overall world rugby history. They have won the second most World Cups and the first most international tests. They also hold the record of the biggest goal difference in any football or soccer match to this day, which is 31-0 against American Samoa. Canada comes 14th in rugby, which is less than good, and their football team is, I don't think they've made it into the past 4 or 5 World Cups. Thank you.
I thank the speaker for his remarks. The second opposition will now deliver the last speech opposing the case.
It is with this that I found 2 points of contention with the opposition case. The first speaker from the affirmative team stated that the Canadian climate is horrendous and unbearable. While the Australian weather may be warmer, it is in times of hardship that the Canadian climate has formed a sense of resilience that cannot be fostered by any other nation. Australians would no doubt cave and crumble under the might of their first blizzard, where Canadians would stand proud and strong, rugged up and warm. Secondly, the second speaker from the affirmative team stated that Australia's sporting success has fostered happiness in the Australian population. On the contrary, the long-running rivalry of the State of Origin Cup, a rugby game between Queensland and New South Wales, has fostered a spirit of animosity between the 2 sides and is a long-running source of depression and conflict in the off periods. Now, moving on to my team's case, I will be presenting 2 points. First, that Canadian accents are far easier on the ear, and secondly, that Canadian musicians have far more talent than Australians. And now to my first point. The thick harshness of the Australian brogue has led Canadian tour guides, bus drivers, teachers and shopkeepers everywhere to question the validity of their hearing, and in turn, the long-term mental effects of ultraviolet rays. By comparison, the soft, mellow undertones of the Canadian inflection with its flat vowels allow for far more effective comprehension and provide a sense of calm and self-assurance with its apologetic nature. The popular Canadianisms of for sure, don't you know, and awesome leave no doubt whatsoever about their good, if somewhat rueful intentions. I will now move on to my second point, that the talent of Canadian musicians is unsurpassable. The unmatched talent and unshakable fashion sense of Canadian music stars is no comparison to the small-reaching indie bands of Australia. Pop icons such as Justin Bieber, Carly Rae Jepsen and Avril Lavigne have had such widespread influence that they have been successful in transforming a large proportion of the population into what is colloquially known as LGs. Justin Bieber's hair flip alone has become a trademark for teenage boys desperately searching for somebody to love. And it is believed that the teen heartthrob has been solely responsible for the popular rise of the
better voice. The unshakable hold of the popular repetitive songs such as Carly Rae Jepsen's Call Me Maybe are so strong that they have been known to cause widespread insomnia from being so reinforced in the minds of the international population. It is on this basis that I conclude that Canadian pop artists have far more talent in influencing their respective target audiences through their outstanding fashion style and lovingly respected songs. In conclusion, I have shown that Australia is certainly not better than Canada for two main reasons. Firstly, the Canadian accents are far easier on the ear and more comprehensible, and secondly, that musicians have far more talent and influence. Ultimately, I think that my team has made it clear that Canada is the place to be. Ladies and gentlemen, that is, of course, why we're all here. I thank the speaker for her remarks, and to make a correction, the third proposition will now deliver the last speech for that case.
Before I deliver my summary, I'd like to about a few of my opponent's points. First of all, they spoke about Canadian climate, saying how it's very variable. But I like to disagree with that, because no one who's ever gone up north to Yukon has ever came back saying, oh, that was just lovely. Not just that, also saying that the song Call Me Maybe and other band artists such as Avril Lavigne have started a new chain of things called LGs. That term is very demeaning to the women of the world, including Canada. Because LGs is a term referred to as little girls, which is not just demeaning, but is also very inappropriate in a way, and has led to, how should I say this, prejudice among young women of the planet. Not just that, why should Canada be proud of their artists? With artists such as Nickelback, whose songs all sound the same, that is not something to be proud of. It is something that we should actually keep down when we have great stars in Australia, such as Russell Crowe, winner of so many Oscars that he's actually lost count from his fingers. And not just that, Justin Bieber started a chain of haircuts that are basically one off from a bowl cut. I'll now move on to my summary. First of all, in my summary, my first speaker presented the point about how terrible Canadian climate leads to not just depression, but also to a lower population, such as in the up north. And secondly, that Canadian celebrities are inferior and spread prejudice and sexism among the world. And my second speaker presented the point that Australia is better at all sports than Canada, one of which being rugby. And secondly, that Australia is just a happier place to be. Australia is a place to be no matter what. In Canada, if you enjoy health hazards such as poutine or Nickelback, then you may as well just head over. But if you want to be happy in a nation that is proud of its sport and its people, then please go to Australia. Thank you.
Okay, to make a second correction, that was in fact the third proposition, and the third opposition will now deliver the final speech opposing the case. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today we have heard from an opposition who is rubbed up looking like they're about to walk into a blizzard, that maybe the Canadian climate is not the greatest thing in the world. Now, I believe this is simply a lack of bravery and resilience on their part, and more to the point, I would like to further criticize their arguments presented today. It is with this that I will move on to the three main issues in today's debate. Firstly, the idea of talent and how it compares between the two countries. Secondly, the climates. And thirdly, I will discuss the happiness levels of both countries. Now, today the issue of talent has come up repeatedly in this debate, both in sport and music. Now, firstly, I'd like to look at the notion that Australia is a better nation because they are better at rugby. Now, I do not think that we should be judging the worth and value of countries on how good they are at tackling each other and throwing balls to one another. This does not define the worth of a nation, ladies and gentlemen. Now, secondly, we heard this ridiculous notion from the first speaker of the affirmative team that Justin Bieber is, and I quote, the worst and most hated celebrity of all time. Now, if anyone in the audience today has seen the movie Never Say Never, they will know that this is completely false. Now, I remember distinctly the scene where Justin Bieber is blazing down the street on his Segway, followed by hordes of screaming girls running after him. I think this just about proves that he is not the worst and most hated, but rather the best and most loved celebrity of all time. And this is why Canada is a better nation. Now let's move on to this issue of climate. We also heard that this statement that Canada has the worst climate and weather in the world. Now, I believe that this is all a matter of perspective. Now, as you can see, the opposition is sitting in a classroom about 20 degrees Celsius, looking like they're about to walk into a blizzard. I do not think they are the people with the right authority to be able to tell us what a bad climate is and what bad weather is. I think that sitting in 40-degree heat with nothing you can do about it is far worse than going outside of a blizzard or whatever it is, and drinking hot cocoa in front of a fire. I think that's a pretty nice afternoon or evening to spend. Now, to the last issue of today's debate, which discusses the happiness of each country. Apparently, Australia has a higher happiness rating. But, as my first speaker said, the Canadian delicacies like poutine create pure joy for citizens, and this definitely increases happiness ratings. As you can see, the Canadian nation is also upside down, which adds to the happiness of the country, because we see with children, they hang upside down in playgrounds for hours for enjoyment. And this is why I came here, and it's been quite fun being upside down in the world. Now, to summarize my team's case, my first speaker discussed Canadian cuisine and the Canadian climate. My second speaker discussed the Canadian accent and Canadian musicians. And ultimately, I think we have proven that Canada is the better nation. Thank you.
On behalf of the House, I thank the debaters for their speeches. I now declare this debate closed.